In addition to the basic definition of voluntary consent, the Canadian Criminal Code also outlines 5 scenarios where consent can't be obtained.
Point number 1 says that consent can't be obtained if someone else says yes. So this one is pretty simple. Only you can consent for you. Your friends can't consent for you, your partner can't consent for you, and your family can't consent for you. Only you can consent for you.
The second point of consent says that consent can't be obtained if there is an abuse of a position of power, trust, or authority. Some examples of these types of positions might include a boss, manager, or supervisor, a coach, a teacher or professor, a babysitter or a caregiver, a parent, religious leaders, law enforcement, or medical professionals like a doctor, nurse, or a counselor. Someone might not hold a formal position of power, but they could still have a lot of power, and that is what we call social power. Social power can look like someone having money or access to other resources like transportation or shelter, or even popularity or celebrity. No matter the type of power someone has, they can't abuse that position of power, trust, or authority to get someone to engage in sexual contact with them.
The third point of consent says that consent can't be obtained if someone says no or implies no through their words or their actions. Someone might communicate a no directly by saying something like, "Stop, not right now," or "I'd rather wait." Someone might also communicate a no more indirectly by saying something like, "I need to go home soon," or "I have to get up early tomorrow," or even something like, "I have a headache." Someone might communicate a no without saying anything at all by doing something like moving away, crossing their arms, looking down, ignoring someone, pushing them away, or even freezing up and not doing anything at all. Any sign that someone isn't interested or is uncomfortable, whether it's direct or indirect, through words or actions, are all clear no's, and they mean that we need to stop what we're doing and check in with our partners.
The fourth point of consent says that consent can't be obtained if someone is unable to give consent, whether that's because they're unconscious, sleeping, or incapacitated from alcohol or other drugs. Now, most people get that you can't consent if you're sleeping or unconscious, but lots of people do have questions about consent and alcohol. Lots of us have probably seen someone who's incapacitated from drinking and can recognize what too drunk looks like. That person is usually stumbling around, slurring their words, acting out of character, maybe vomiting or even passing in and out of consciousness. If someone is too drunk, then they are not able to give consent. And the responsibility to make sure that there is consent rests with the person who is pursuing sexual contact. So if that person wants to hook up with someone who has been drinking, then they need to make sure that that other person is not too drunk to give consent. This responsibility does not change, even if the person pursuing sexual contact has also been drinking. If they have been drinking, then they need to make sure that they are sober enough to tell if the person that they want to hook up with is sober enough and able to consent. The bottom line is, if you can't be 100% sure that the person you want to hook up with is sober enough to consent, then you need to wait before you do anything with that person.
The fifth point of consent says that consent can't be obtained if someone changes their mind. Everyone has the right to agree to sexual activity and then change their mind before or during that sexual activity. If I agree to have sex with my partner after our date, but by the time we get back to their place, I'm just not in the mood anymore, I am allowed to change my mind. A yes at the start of the night does not equal a yes at the end of the night. And someone always has the right to change their mind, even in the middle of sex. This is why it's so important that we can recognize all the different ways that people communicate no, whether it's by pulling away, implying no with their words, or freezing up. Because if we see that the person we're with is uncomfortable, that means that we need to check in with them and stop if they want to stop.
If these 5 points seem like a lot to remember, here are 4 simple things that you do need to remember about voluntary consent. It's mutual, it's enthusiastic, it's freely given, and it's ongoing. And if it's not those 4 things, it's not consent.